Hey, welcome Pine Island Research. It's Monday night, and I'm just catching up on the chat here. We've got viewers piling in. I appreciate your support. Know you've got a lot of choices on a Monday night. Time to wait to spend your time, and you choose to join us. I appreciate that. And I even see Faster Man said, "This is the third time today I've seen Jeff." I agree. We did coffee time this morning. It was a great show. It was fun. Uh, Fun show this morning. And then had an invite from Joe Snyder over at Western New York Bigfoot, who him and his wife are celebrating their 19th wedding anniversary. So congratulations, Joe and Molly. But I popped on with some others, wishing them well. Excited for tonight's show. Got a guest on that I've been wanting to get on for a while. Love watching his show. It's another person who works in research, but also many of you know from the YouTube community of the different Bigfoot shows, and we've got Daniel from ECBRO here tonight, so that should be a great interview. It is warming up here. As a matter of fact, you see those little, let's see here, white lines on my backdrop. That's because there's sunlight still shining through the blinds on this window that's over that way. I'm not used to it being bright out still at 8 p.m. Central Time here. Still adjusting to that. It was a beautiful day. Fired up the grill tonight. The wind actually went down for a moment. Yesterday it was about 40 mile an hour all day long. Today it hit close to 70 degrees and the wind dropped down to about 20. It wasn't so bad. All the ice is off the lakes. We're getting the docks in. It's nice. It's starting to actually feel like spring here. And we've been fortunate here in this part of the country, and the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, where we haven't had our typical bad weather. I mean, we haven't really had near me any tornado threats or anything yet. I know that was pretty bad down in Oklahoma and Missouri and even through the southeast. But up here in these typical states that see that tornadic weather, and Kansas, Nebraska, the Dakotas, kind of the plains, it hasn't been horribly bad yet. So thankful for that. But hey, I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to bring Daniel in here. Let me pull this up. Hey, buddy, how are you tonight?
Hey, I am doing great. Thank you, Jeff, for having me on here tonight. This is a pleasure, an honor.
It's a pleasure having you. I love watching your show, and I know there's a lot of others in chat that appreciate your show. And for those who are listening on podcast, we upload the show later this evening to all the podcast platforms. And a lot of people will listen to it tomorrow on their way to work or while they're working. And if you're doing that, we invite you to stop by YouTube, not only subscribe to the Untold Radio Network, but check out ECBRO, right? We want them to find you there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The ECBRO. The YouTube channel is Bigfoot Zone ECBRO. Then also, I actually conduct the same way you do. After my podcast, I usually upload to the stream the other podcast platforms as well. So they could look up ECBRO Bigfoot Radio. Yeah, a lot of them are recorded live through the radio platform, but a lot of them are pre-recorded. Well, I shouldn't say pre-recorded. They were recorded live from YouTube, and then I do a slight edit and throw them up on the other platforms. So, yeah, so they can find the Bigfoot Zone ECBRO or ECBRO Bigfoot Radio. So either way, whatever they feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I say it over and over. It's kind of almost easy to get tunnel vision doing these live stream shows on YouTube and lose focus of just how many people are really listening to the show on the podcast platforms. A lot of the shows that I do when I'm interviewing somebody, Well, even like if I share a comment and pull it up, I'll have to go through and make sure I read the comment, because just putting it on screen doesn't help somebody who's listening on podcast.
Oh yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
But yeah, the really bad ones where the podcast listeners get robbed is when we start sharing pictures or video and stuff like that. It's like they get to listen to it, and that's about it. So
yeah, I feel like sometimes I do a pre-recorded intro before the uploaded episode plays on the other platform, and I have to explain this was recorded live on YouTube, Bigfoot Zone, blah blah blah. I said there was images that were shared and discussed. I'm sorry you won't see them.
yeah.
So
yeah, it's so there's just so many people that listen. But you know what? I encourage them all, even if they aren't able to watch it live, which is great. We've got a pretty strong chat following. I mean, I've usually got between, anywhere from 35 to 55 people are watching it live as we stream it. But, over the coming month, you'll have about 700 people who will view the show on YouTube, but I'll have like 4,000 to 4,500 people who listen to it on podcast platforms. It just blows me away that there's that many people doing that. But yeah, it's awesome that everybody finds the time to tune into shows like ours, and I just really appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you were talking earlier, too, as far as, you said people have the choice to watch and do what they're doing today on a Monday. I kind of feel the same way because I host my podcast every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Mm-hmm. And, I get it, it fluctuates, but I get a decent viewing and following while I'm live and whatnot. But at the same time, it's like, it's a Friday night. People will probably out doing something or doing their family thing, But, it is what it is. But I still managed to get a halfway decent following, But yeah, Friday I feel like is a challenging time slot, But I do it because it works for me, on my part,
Sure.
So
I mean, it's a commitment to, when I first started doing the show on my old channel on Pine Island Research, I started doing it on Monday night right from the beginning here, a little over a year and a half ago, and I was really a little bit leery about committing to a Friday or a Saturday night, because I've got boys that are 17 and 18 years old. There's always something that's going on. And, what happens if there's a hot bite and somebody wants to go fishing on a Saturday? It's like, no, I got to do a show tonight. I can't go.
Right.
I mean, those are big commitments to do something like that. And, I realize that Monday nights during football season, I've got probably the biggest competition in the world you go up against. But, it just seems like year round we get about the same traffic, and that's really my time to catch up. Like if I'm in the boat out on the lake fishing on a Saturday, I'll listen to podcasts that are from past shows that last week of people that I follow on YouTube that upload to podcasts. What a great way. I mean, if you're driving or if you're just out in the boat kicking back, to be able to turn something like that on and have it playing in the background, I think it's just awesome. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, for what I do for work, a majority of the time, I mean, I'm on the road driving, headed somewhere to do my, deliveries. And if it's a long drive, because a lot of times I turn on the YouTube, I got the Bluetooth in the work truck. So, I mean, I'll turn on YouTube, either listen to music, or on some occasions, I'll listen to a podcast, so, and even though it gets you in the zone, you're tuned into that podcast, it's, it's interesting. You got to, for those who haven't tried it, try it out. If you're going on a trip, listen to it. Now, my ex-girlfriend, when we used to go on trips or go down places all the time, and she loves Sasquatch Chronicles. And I'm just me. I love podcasts, but I got to be in the mood for it. But most of the time, she would put on a episode and play 2 or 3 of them back to back, and we got a 5-6 hour drive, and I was like, okay. Some of them I just was like, oh, whatever. But then again, if I start listening to some of them, I was actually getting into them because it's based off the story. Some of the stories that are told on there are very credible, and you get drawn into them. But then on the
Mhm.
other hand, you're like, okay. And then you just want to sleep, on the other hand.
Well,
But
yeah, and I've talked about that before. I mean, I'm not naive enough to think that because there's 1,000 episodes of Sasquatch encounters out there on a channel that all of them must be true. I get that, maybe half of them are embellished or even made up, but a
yeah,
lot of them aren't. And boy, when you hear one that is, I mean, I, I don't want this to sound naive, but that sense of genuine emotional conveyance when they share their encounters. I mean, it's a little bit easier to tell. I just really appreciate hearing encounters from the person who had the experience. I don't
right,
want to hear somebody read it in an email to me. I mean, not that I don't appreciate that, but it's just a different experience than hearing it from the source of the person who encountered it.
right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's like me. I gather reports. People share their sightings and stuff with me. So I've over the years I've gathered a number of reports, or I'll have somebody contact me. Like I actually had that happen earlier today. This one lady was giving me her information, was telling me where she lived, what state, and let me know what's been going on and off. And she doesn't talk about it much because her family. She actually has brought it up once or twice to her family, but they think that she's nuts. But
Mhm.
but given that location, I was like, well, I got connections. I know people that work that area that I work with. So yeah, I mean, I gathered her information, and she kept apologizing. She said, "I'm sorry, I'm bothering you." I said, "No." I said, "This is what I do." I said, so I started asking her more. I said, "Give me some more information." I was asking certain questions, and I said, "Look, I got connections. I know somebody that's in your area." Sure enough, I know another lady that does research and gathers information up her way. She only lives an hour from this particular location, so yeah. So I mean, hopefully they connected because I gave uh, contact information on both sides. So
Mhm.
we'll see. Yeah. So it's on their hands now. But I was glad to get that information.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, and
but
I remember it's kind of a funny story, but I mean, this was years ago. My wife was sitting on the couch and I had walked into the room and my encounter that I had back when I was 18 years old, I didn't talk about it forever with people just because I just didn't have anybody in my circle that I felt it was okay to risk being judged like that. I was in the military for a number of years and then worked in real estate and worked with some high dollar real estate investors that I didn't care for any of them to label me as being somebody that they felt that they couldn't trust or they thought was different than that, something like that. I couldn't afford to lose their business, so to speak. So the risk versus reward just seemed like it loomed over me for so long I just could not find people that you could sit down and say, let me tell you what happened to me without feeling like there was really a big risk being taken there.
right,
And that kept me from talking about it openly, even when I first got married. But then it was a number of years ago. I walked out into the living room. And my wife was watching a video on her phone with her headphones in. And I said, what are you watching? She goes, man, you wouldn't believe this. She says, this guy had an encounter with a Sasquatch and he emailed it to this guy, and this guy's reading this, and it's so crazy. And I'm standing there looking at her going, well, really? Like we've been married for I don't know how long. And I felt like I am that you would just think I'm crazy and pack your crap up and leave if I told you all the details of my encounter.
right.
And she is listening to this, and I remember asking her, "Oh, who is it? What channel is it?" She told me, and it wasn't a channel that I really found a lot of value in, but it was just crazy that she was She was so like, "This is just amazing," I said, let me grab a couple beers. We're going to go sit out on the deck for a couple hours. I've got something to tell you.
Right.
but I get
Mm.
that, people really like listening to those to these encounters. One of the channels that I've kind of found some value in is not one is Brian King Sharp's
Hmm.
Sasquatch Odyssey. He shares some encounters there, but I really like and I'm not real big into Dogman, okay? I just am not. I don't find that flesh and blood slot that it fits in. Although if I ever have an encounter, maybe I'll feel differently, obviously. But
Right. I'm the same way.
my research just hasn't led me across that path yet. Okay, and I've done
Exactly.
a lot of research, been out in the outdoors a lot of time, and I just haven't experienced it yet. That's not to say that it couldn't happen to somebody else. So I'm not trying to belittle anybody else's encounter or experience, but it just hasn't happened to me. But a person who focuses a lot on that has also started a channel. Vic Cundiff is one of the nicest guys you'll ever talk to in this community. This guy is so darn nice.
Oh yeah,
But
I've been on a couple of his episodes. Yeah.
yeah. So he's got a channel called My Bigfoot Sighting. And I really like it because he asked me to share my encounter on there, which I did. But out of the 90 some episodes that he's got, the person who had the encounter is who's sharing the encounter. And it's not them being asked questions that lead them in directions. It's them just telling the story from beginning to end. So most of these episodes are, at least a half an hour to an hour long. But Vic puts so much time into editing the back. You hear their voice telling this, but like if they're talking about walking along the edge of the river, he's got a video of that show. He just kind of visually takes you on a journey without fabricating anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
And boy, I really appreciate that. He puts a lot of time into it, but I think there's a lot of people that have checked that channel out and like it too. I just, like I say, there's something to hearing that voice of the person who's had the experience versus hearing somebody read an email. And then also, you kind of delve into the people who read the emails. Is there really a check and balance in place that makes you realize that that email wasn't wrote by them themselves? I mean, I could start a whole
Yeah.
channel writing fictional emails and reading them. That would blow everybody away. And I'm not saying that about any one person doing that. I don't know that that's the case, but I think that's something that people consider, the
Right.
value of hearing it from the source.
Exactly. Yeah, because like you mentioned, that made me think of there's writers out there. We have some very creative, imaginable writers out there. They got quite the imagination. They know how to storm stuff up. You'll be surprised what people are capable of doing. I mean, I know authors firsthand. That do Bigfoot encrypted books, and a lot of it's based off of true events. Some of it's all just straight up fictional. Fantasy and fictional type book. But yeah, they're very creative writers. So who's to say that some of these can be fabricated, but in a very well done way?
Well, I think
So
some of the encounters that I put the most value in are not only ones that I've heard from the source, but I've heard them shared on multiple different venues, and nothing changes in the details. I mean,
right,
they may have shared it 10 times, and it's exactly I mean, there is no deterrence from what they're telling you because they're reliving it, they're visualizing it, and they're sharing those details that they've got running through their head every day of their freaking life since it's happened.
right,
And and you can tell that that's what you're listening to when you hear somebody that you would consider credible in doing that. And I think that's some of the most interesting encounters. When I think of like the top 10 I've ever heard, most of them I've heard more than once, and that's what makes them really intriguing to me, is that they're just, you can tell they actually experienced it.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes when I hear stories or I'm listening to somebody's encounter, I like that. Now, this does not happen all the time with every story I hear. However, I feel like when I'm being drawn into the story and I'm visualizing it for myself, I feel like that's got to be legit. You know, I feel like that's real. Like this must have really happened. Like I've shared my encounter. I've shared it multiple times. Yeah, does it get old? Absolutely. Like how many times am I going to repeat it? But
Yeah.
so but yeah, when I'm telling my story, I mean in my head as I'm telling it, like in my mind, I'm still seeing where I was and what was going on and who I was with. So yeah, I mean that's I guess how it works. I guess, but so
Yeah, I know when I shared my encounter, it's just something, first of all, it's not something where, from 200 yards away, I watched something walk across the road for 4 seconds. I mean, this was more of a long drawn out experience. And when I share it, it feels like I am watching this movie in my mind for the millionth time, because that's how many times I've thought about it since it happened to me. And to share the details and take you on that journey and tell you what happened that day, it almost feels like if I was to leave something out or leave a detail out, that it's almost like painful. You know what I mean? Like,
right,
like I've got to tell you about this and this and this and this because I don't. It's like as I'm going through and reliving that and trying to put that into words, I don't know how you say, okay, let's skip that part. You know what I mean? Because I didn't get
right,
to skip it that day. But
right,
but yeah, no, I think we're kind of on the same page in kind of what you hear. And like I say, I mean, I've said this so many times. I mean, if I'm at a conference or something and somebody comes up to me and says, "Let me tell you about my UFO experience," or "Let me tell you about whatever," I'm all ears, man. I mean, I find value in hearing people share experiences, whether or not they're experiences that I've had or not, doesn't matter to me. And even in this community, when it comes to Sasquatch, um, I hear people talk about it, and I might be watching a channel of somebody that I'm not even a big fan of. That doesn't mean I can't learn something by watching that channel. We don't have to be friends in order to learn something from each other. And so I try to set some of those differences aside. I mean, I really feel if we don't focus on the majority of which we share in common and only focus on the minority in which we don't have in common, we're going to end up poisoning each other. And
right.
we see that happen all the time here in this community. But
Oh, for
again, I
sure.
want to thank everybody for joining. I'm going to play a quick promo here, and then we'll be right back. So
show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
All righty. So tell us a little bit about the origin of how ECBRO came to be. I mean, I always find these stories fascinating, Daniel, when somebody starts a research effort of some sort. What really drives them to do that and fuels that passion to do that is something I find interesting. So,
well, personally, I personally, in my honest opinion, I don't. I guess it's because it's. I mean, I'll tell it like it is, but I don't see that it's being too exciting. I mean, but it. I mean, when I got started, of course, when I did get involved, yeah, I was very excited about the whole thing. I was, but I started off independently. I was just by myself. You know, I'm somebody that grew up in the woods since I was a young child, and either I was tagging along, hunting with dad, or simply playing in the woods. I did a lot of you know playing little war games and building forts in the woods and this and that, and so I was always acquainted and very familiar with the outdoors and nature. Um, I can't say from a young age I never had no unexplained experiences at a young age. Um, but as I got older, I can remember when I first saw the Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin footage, and I know I'm probably not the only one. I know there's many more out there that this video footage had actually set a path for many people, and sure enough, it did for me. Because that video footage opened up a door. It sparked a very serious curiosity and a big interest that had me wanting to learn more about the subject. Um, I know not everybody might be convinced or not, but that video alone really, really like shook me. I mean, in a good way. So yeah, like I said, that video footage had me really on alert. It opened up my senses. Uh, it had me out in the woods, really paying attention. I felt like I know this sounds silly. I say this on from time to time, but anyone that's familiar with Spider-Man and how he became Spider-Man, he got that bite. I was the same way because after getting that bite, yeah, my senses were on full alert. I mean, it was like it became natural, but I was zoned in. I was tuned in, I should say, to the outdoors. Um, Everything became heightened. Sounds, any smells that may have been around. My vision of what was in front of me, regardless if it was on the ground, um, and being young and new into the topic, I learned about certain things that some people were contributing to Bigfoot. Um, of course, that was after I got on social media because when I stepped foot on social media, I was actually blown away by how many people were actually involved in the subject itself. I learned about a lot of theories. A lot of people had some crazy theories. I never jumped on board with any of them. I was like that kid in the back of the classroom, just taking notes.
Yeah.
Because I had to do my own research. I had to find a way to look into this for myself. You know, and the more I got involved on social media, I started talking with people, and you know, and it got to the point where like, yeah, I want to organize a group. I want to start a team. And even in the beginning, again, I was a very solo person. And there's times I still am, although I take groups out there. I have individuals that are dedicated to the ECBRO and that like to support us. And I take these people out, although they do their own thing in their areas. But um, again, there's times where I'm out there by myself. You know, for one thing, I know my area very well. I come to learn of the area. Because like I said, even taking other people out there, uh, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but when you take other people out there and you're leading them around, there are some disadvantages to that. One, you're with a group of people, which could be disturbing to nature. Two, you got to worry about what they're capable of doing. It slows you down. I've had people out there crying because we were walking too far into the woods, but I mean, I just that's just how it was for me. I mean, I wanted to take people out there to learn what I was discovering and show them where I've been finding evidence. Um, but yeah, I mean, this whole Bigfoot research thing for me turned into an educational thing, a desire to want to learn about the unknown. Um, and then if there was anything that I learned or obtained from my experience or my time out in nature, I wanted to turn around and share that back with the public. Um, And it wasn't just looking for signs of a subject that many people don't believe in, but I found myself paying more attention to the wildlife. I found that wildlife is very important in this world, especially in any subject when it comes to the unknown, Bigfoot or cryptids in general. Um, because I did not want to become like all these other people out there. Oh, I love Bigfoot, so I'm just going to call myself a Bigfoot researcher, and just go through the woods and take pictures of everything that's broken out there.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be that person. Although I do take pictures of a lot of interesting things. I mean, I call it nature's art. When I find a broken tree, or twisted tree, or a weird formation, I mean, I always consider it as or I call it the possibility of maybe Bigfoot did do this, but I have to look at all the other possibilities and consider them. There's so many other suspects out there. As I tell
Yeah.
people, Bigfoot's got to be your last consideration, um, because I've learned that there's other wildlife suspects that are known for doing what we contribute to Bigfoot or the unknown.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I keep an open mind, very much so, but I'm very objective. I became very objective in this topic. Um, and I'm not gonna lie. In the beginning, I was one of these people that were almost like saying, "Yeah, I found Bigfoot evidence." I didn't know if it was Bigfoot evidence. When I
Mhm.
got when I had to really check myself, I said, "Oh, slow down. You sound like an idiot." And then I said, calling this Bigfoot evidence when you don't know. I didn't witness Bigfoot doing it, just like everybody else today that's making these claims. They did not witness Bigfoot doing it, but yet they're going to make that claim.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think that's an interesting thing you bring up because I remember when I first really started getting into I like you, I grew up in a family where I was always in the outdoors, hunting, whatnot. When I started guiding on my own after I got out of the military, this is after I'd had an encounter, but yet I'm not going out there looking for Bigfoot. I'm going out there to archery hunt big game. I'm going out there to canoe the boundary waters. Whatever my purpose was, that's why I'm there. That's the number one reason why I'm there. Your peripheral really opens up to how you
oh
look at a
yeah,
shoreline and the sounds you hear, the way you analyze them. Everything's different after you've had an encounter. The way that you look at the outdoors. It didn't, I didn't want to start with being, oh, let's find evidence and be optimistic about it, and then mature and say, well, let's be cautiously optimistic about it, and then mature even more and say, I tried to start when I would look at data or look at something that could be, whether it's forest language or whatever. um, I I tried to always look at it and say, I'm going to try to work as hard to disprove that this was Bigfoot as much as I am going to try to prove that it could have been. And
right,
if you don't apply that same tenacity to both those perspectives, I don't know if you're really fairly applying the scientific method to research. I mean, the people that go out there so cautious or so optimistic that it is, and I've experienced that. I've had friends that are, borderline skeptics, so to speak, but they are intrigued and interested in the phenomena, right?
right,
And they'll go out and they'll find something, they'll send me a picture and I'll say, "Well, I don't think that's I'll tell you what my concerns are about that." And I'll tell them or I'll share them with somebody like Doug or somebody and say, "This is our consensus on this." And I'll hear them say, "Well, I disagree." And it's like, based on what? What do you mean you'll disagree? I mean, you have nothing conclusive there that proves anything. And yet,
right,
when somebody points that out to you, you want to disagree. That is frustrating, but it's even more frustrating, I think. And I've said this before on the show, where you see people in this community who have shows, who are influencing people, um, with streams that are approaching their opinions and hypotheses and presenting them as facts.
Mhm.
And I just think they do such a disservice to this community, especially people who are just starting to educate themselves on the subject. They hear somebody saying, "Oh, if you ever see this or hear this, this is what it means." And it's like, what are you talking about? You're presenting this so factually, you know?
Right.
So,
All right.
well, this is
I'm
a subject that has very little facts, first of all.
Exactly. I'm laughing because I know exactly what you're talking about. Trust me, I can name people, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So
I in this well, it's one of the things on being a part of the Untold. Probably on my old channel, I probably would have named some people, but I'm
right.
trying to take the professional approach and say that I'll give examples of it, but I'm not out to do a hit piece on it. That's not my niche. I've got friends that have channels like Nikki over at Harry Man Hoaxes and Hoodwinks, like Steve Coles over at Squatch Detective. That's their MO. Brent over at the Tall Ones. They look at these guys. They look at these people presenting this crap as facts, and they call them out on it. And they say,
Right.
whoa, pump the brakes. And I'm glad there are people that are doing that and keeping people to really try to look at this subject in the right perspective and not look at it based on the shock value and circus mentality that you see in some of the titles of the shows that are out there on YouTube. They're
Right.
designed to catch people to come to the NASCAR race that has the most wrecks. I mean, it's not.
Oh yeah.
It's not.
No.
I don't think it's fair. But
Well, one thing, like I tell people, like I myself personally, I like to feel that I'm very objective, and because I try to have, even though I'm a believer and a knower, or I guess I'll say a knower, but with that being said, I still have to be objective. I still have to act like a skeptic,
sure.
but at the same time. And I'm always telling people, I said, you got to really be objective and have, just be a little bit more critical with what you're analyzing or what you're observing. But at the same time, I know I'm thinking to myself, sometimes it could be a little too dangerous because I think or believe there's such a thing as being too objective or too skeptical on something because, if you got to at least be able to consider that possibility.
Yeah.
Just because if you just completely shut it off and cut it out and and I'm not saying that the woo exists. I'm not saying that because I get questioned about certain things that I don't even talk about. But yeah, I mean, because I never experienced any of it for myself. But I mean, I would like to if these things are real, or like talking about you talking about orbs earlier before we got started. I mean, I never experienced any such thing. I never seen a portal. I mean, but I'm going to be very objective on such things because I never experienced it. I've spent so much time in the woods over the years. I mean, I'm young compared to many of the researchers out there. I mean, I'm only 43, but I've been in the woods basically all my life.
Yeah.
But I never experienced such things. So.
Yeah.
But
that's really one of the things that kind of throws it into perspective for me.
Yeah.
Is that, when I was 18 in the middle of freaking nowhere in northern Manitoba on an island on a lake, I had one experience. Since then, I've had some experiences in research where I've seen what I feel was data that showed they were in this area. However, when I factor in the literally thousands upon thousands of hours that I've spent in remote areas of northern Idaho and Montana and Wyoming and Saskatchewan, big game hunting and guiding big game archery hunters, and I've never had an experience out there. I've never heard something that I couldn't attribute to a natural cause. I've never seen something walking upright in a bipedal motion on a far ridge line. I've never, out of all the time that I've spent out there, I've never had that happen. And it just seems like, God, in some of these places that I've been and the amount of time that I've spent in those places, it seems like I should have seen that stuff there, right? So when somebody says, well, hey, we're going out this weekend, and then Monday morning they're like, oh, we've got videos and pictures. It's like, dude, how do you do that? I mean, I just like,
Yeah. I mean, I know, I totally understand. Not everything's going to be seen with the naked eye. I mean, sometimes you never know. I'm not saying I have, but like I always carry my camcorder or my smartphone out there in the woods. I mean, I love to keep my camcorder with me because it has a very sharp. It's a Sony high def handycam, but the zoom in clarity is amazing.
yeah,
Every now and then, if I'm not recording with it, I'll pull it out, set it up on the tripod, and I'll do a slow zoom and a pan
yeah,
in my surrounding area from hiking through the woods because there might be something nearby that I'm not seeing. I mean, and I'm not just looking for Bigfoot, but I got to consider, hey, there's predators out there too that might be hanging out in those bushes right there. Yeah, I got binoculars, but the thing is, I use a camera because if I do spot something, then I have the opportunity to touch that button and start recording. So I mean, I don't practice that enough, but I maybe I should. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I like to do a slow zoom and pan, and scan the
I
area.
do that more and more now when I'm archery hunting, when I'm like, hunting a tree stand overlooking a cut cornfield or what along a river. And when I'll be watching deer at sundown as they're stepping into this field. But the most intriguing moments to me are when all those deer start hauling butt towards one corner. I'm not watching the deer. I'm watching the other end of the field. I want to see the coyote step out. I want to
Right.
see what it is that's driving those deer out of there. Because I keep thinking that's if you'll let your peripheral stop watching what you think you should be watching and start looking at these other areas and panning these other areas, that's probably where you're going to find something. But
Right.
one of the most intriguing, I think, tactics there is to put, even if it's not a great camera, even if you're just buying a used, Hero 8 or something and wearing it on a back harness on your back
Right.
as you go hiking, and watching what's behind you.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to spend 10 hours afterwards watching the video to see if there was
yeah,
any. But to
yeah,
me, that's an intriguing tactic. I love that tactic,
absolutely.
There's just not a
Yeah,
lot of people that do it.
and see, that's something I used to practice. Yeah, I've only done it a couple times, but yeah, I have most of the time when I go out in the woods hiking or whatever, I bring my small backpack. That way I could just keep maybe a couple bottles of water and a little bit of plaster just in case. But when I used to use my big rucksack, which I haven't used in a while, it's got the big, got the metal frame bar on it, which was perfect to put a GoPro on.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've done that, and yeah, the GoPro I used to use, it was an off-brand. It was a $40 camera. That for me, check out the video footage. It worked. It looked great for $40. I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, because I can't afford all the big fancy equipment all the time. But
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I had my first camera. Actually, I was digging in this drawer because I thought it might still be in here, but some Chinese made, offshoot of the Hero. And what I started using them for was I love to kayak fish. I have one of my kayaks is set up with a 11-inch, LCD showing hummingbird with side scan and all the sonar stuff, all that, right? But behind me was just a piece of conduit with a little mount on it with a camera that sat up behind me that kind of overlooks in front of you. So as I'm fishing and catching fish, I could film it,
right, and I
started
love
looking
watching
at it
those
going,
videos.
man, I could really start coming up with better ideas on how to put cameras on yourself when you're moving, because I don't know. I honestly think this is kind of an out there blanket statement. I think you probably got a better chance at capturing something on camera off of a back camera or a head camera or a camera on an e-bike or a side camera on a kayak as you're kayaking shorelines, things like that, just because I believe that Bigfoot's weakest link is probably its curiosity. And so when it
Yep.
sees you moving, if it can be in a comfortable area where it feels like it's undetected and secluded, it's probably really intrigued on watching what you're doing versus strapping a camera to a tree, not knowing, can Bigfoot sense an IR presence? Can it sense a battery presence? Can it see a UV film coating on the lens of that camera? There's a lot of ideas on why Bigfoot don't want to walk in front of a game camera, but we haven't proven any of them to be true. There's just a lot of speculation on maybe why they don't.
Yeah.
I think that their curiosity being such a weak link for them, where it maybe could put them in a position to getting captured. I think your best bet is going about your own business in the outdoors, filming it, and filming it from angles other than where your eyes are looking, whether that's behind you or beside you or whatever. But like I say, for every hour of video that you're going to run it, you're going to have to spend an hour when you get home watching it. So, I mean, that can get tedious.
Yeah, just like the audio. I do the same thing. Like I bring a digital recorder out there, and I mainly use it during like towards the evening. If I'm camping out there, like okay, it's 7, 8, maybe 9 o'clock. I'll set my digital recorder out there, and I set it as a timestamp. I thought, okay, it's 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm recording now. Blah blah blah. That way, when I do go through that, like say if I'm an hour into it, then I know that hour into it, it's a 10 o'clock period, so I do timestamps on my recordings because I have all my camera. I mean, it's just a simple digital audio recorder, but I'm looking into a couple other ones that might be a little bit more advanced, better quality. But yeah, I mean,
it's those open, inviting moments that maybe it doesn't feel threatened, where it might flex that curiosity a little bit. I really started thinking about this when Doug Hychek's son Blaine was sharing his audio recordings with me and was telling me the backstory on how him and his girlfriend had hiked like tremendous distance, like 15 miles back into this angleworm lake. And they'd set up a tent and kind of had a routine, a fire pit. There was a primitive camp area. But what they would do is, 70% of their time was spent there in camp. But each day they'd go hiking for a few hours. And it was during those times where he felt really inclined to leave audio recorders and things in his camp, because that was finally the time where these humans are going to walk away from where they're staying, that I could walk in and check it out. Maybe he thought these were open areas of opportunity. And if you start thinking like that, you start realizing that if you drive an ATV down a fire trail a long ways and you park the ATV and then you go walk 5 miles out in the wilderness, the best place to have left a camera might be on your ATV.
Right. Yeah.
It may be intrigued on this thing you rode in on and then abandoned for 3 hours. It's a chance for it to walk past it or to look at it or whatever. It may not be too concerned about trying to follow you and risking being seen by another living thing, So,
right. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, especially like my main research area, or I should say a small part of it, because my research area is huge. I mean, it's part of the national forest. And when you enter into the national forest, before you get down into the actual deep woods, I mean, when you're driving down the forest road, for those who's never been out there, I mean, you're already deep in the woods to begin with when you're just driving into the area because the camp spots there, they're primitive. It's not a regular campground. You got to find an area where you can set up a tent, and um, so yeah, you're already deep in the woods for one thing, and and then when you set up a camp, and then you go further deep away from the forest road, and the forest road's all gravel, dirt gravel roads. Yes, there's small parts of them. Depends on what part you come in from into certain areas. Some of them are paved, yeah, but yeah, they're still rough roads. But again, there's thousands and thousands, and I should say hundreds of thousands of acres out there. Um, and then I'm here in Virginia, and then you got other parts of the national forest that connect into West Virginia, and this national forest connects to this other national forest, and so yeah, people don't realize you're already out there in the woods. So if you're parking off the side of the road and you think you got to venture in another 5-10 miles, no, I mean you're already there. So
Yeah.
let the games begin.
So Daniel had asked what camera is good for my e-bike. Daniel, do me a favor and not this morning show and not last week on Monday morning show. I had Alex and Doug both on Coffee Time, but 2 weeks ago on Monday morning, I had just Doug on Coffee Time, and we were talking about the Kickstarter promo and the e-bike that he's got in that. But he shares links in that show to the cameras that he uses on his custom built e-bikes that he builds. And that I think they're the best cameras you can equip an e-bike with. So it might be worth checking that out. It's the Coffee Time from 2 weeks ago today. So, and it's the one that just has Doug Hychek on as a guest. So some good information on equipping an e-bike. But yeah, I think that I think that people are thinking sometimes too much in the human perspective, not only in how we're analyzing data, but maybe how we're trying to plan an approach to research. First of all, that the way we analyze data is almost laughable in some instances. You see people that will say, "Oh, I found this woven whatever. Sasquatch left it for me." Sasquatch's world doesn't revolve around you. First of all,
exactly.
If it had reverence for a family member or a clan member that passed, maybe that's why it wove something, or whether. There's all kinds of reasons why it could have, but for some people, automatically it's me that they did this for. It's like,
right.
I don't know that that's the case. That's a bad spot to start from when trying to come up with the most plausible explanation to what made this and why. It probably doesn't have anything to do with you. But, the other thing would be, how we plan our research and our perspective as far as, what are some of the things that I want to do, how could I leverage its curiosity? You start thinking about the way that they might think, assuming that they have a capable complex thought pattern like we do, to some extent. Maybe in some areas, maybe even further than that when it comes to survivability and raw elements like that. But if you look at an area and say, this is how do I want to approach this area? A lot of times if we just say, how could I get it to not be threatened by me being here, but maybe become curious as to why I'm here? That would require you doing some things different than other people do. For instance, if you hear a tree knock or you hear a whoop and you don't react to it and you just keep going about you force yourself to just keep going about your business, that may be really intriguing to that Sasquatch that did that. They're thinking, usually when I knock on this, people freak out. They're looking at the tree line. This guy acted like he didn't even notice it. Now I'm really comfortable doing it again or trying to amp this up, or, I he's not a threat to me. He didn't even look this direction, right? And so when you start thinking about how will I respond to things or how will I look at things and analyze things, I don't think it hurts to try to do it differently than everybody's been doing it, because we haven't gotten anywhere
Right.
from the 5-yard line that Patterson Gimlin left us on 6 decades ago. So,
yep, absolutely.
what's,
Yeah, I mean, I'm
what are
always up
some
for
of
trying
your-
something new.
Well, I was going to ask you, what are your, when you go out in an area like you, I don't want to, it's not that I'm anti-social. I don't like being around people, but I do like being out in what I would consider high value target areas by myself. I do, just because you don't have those ongoing conversations going on and things like that. You kind of control the amount of presence you're putting out there, so to speak, versus what you could do with 4 or 5 people. But what are some of the tactics and things that you like to do when you're out in an area, in your areas?
Well, to be completely honest with you, that when I'm by myself, yeah, don't get me wrong. There's times I feel like, okay, maybe I'll experiment with something here and there, more in the evening. But most of the time, when I go out there, uh, I'm just going out there to enjoy nature. I'm going out there to camp, just to absorb what's out there. I don't go out in the woods, running through the woods, yelling, hooting, and hollering, banging on trees. Now, I do experiment here and there, maybe not as much as some other people do. I tend to do more when there's other people with me, just to see what the heck will happen. But um, yeah, so I go out there and I tell people to do the same thing. I says, go out there without being aggressive. Go out there to enjoy
Mhm.
yourself. If you plan on camping, sit there and enjoy your camp. If you're with a buddy, you know, just conversate, but yet try to stay focused, because that's another
Yeah.
thing. I've had groups of people out there, and before it even gets dark, I said, guys, when it gets dark, you really want to listen, because everything it's like a light switch. You turn it on, because
Mhm.
nature becomes alive. Nature wakes up, and you never know what you'll hear at night versus what we hardly hear anything during the daytime. So yeah, there's times where you gotta shut people down.
Well, and you
Like
got
shut
to
them
kind
up.
of look at the darkness as being, in a sense, a veil of anonymity to these things. I mean,
Right.
they can get a little bit closer. They could, you know, make a noise
Right.
without
Yep.
assuming that your reaction is going to be to travel to the noise. It's dark. You probably don't feel comfortable traveling to the noise. There is a little bit more of a safer environment to remain elusive or, non-threatened from their perspective anyways.
Right.
For us, we hear a chipmunk in a potato bag at 3 a.m. We're losing our minds, right? I mean, not to them. I mean, they're comfortable in that. They're out there at 3 a.m. every night. So
Oh yeah. 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 Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, if I'm out there for what we call bigfooting, yeah, sometimes especially if I'm by myself, or regardless if there's other people out there, I tend to sit down there. Sometimes even with my head hanging down, and I'm zoned in. I'm like my mind, my senses, my ears, everything. It's like they're like satellites with microphones. I'm zoning in. I'm focusing on what's out there. Um,
mhm.
you know, and because like even with a group of people or just a few people, like we had a camp out of me and two other individuals just a couple months ago, and we're sitting out there. Yeah, we're conversating and everything, but yet we're talking at a low enough tone to where we all hear each other, but yet still hear things. Because like if we're talking or one of us is talking, like there's been a couple times like, oh, we all stop and shut up all at once because we're all hearing that howl, and when we shut up, we're still hearing that howl because like we had a couple long extended howls, solo howls, and we had on the other side of the camp, we had the coyote sounding off, and we had the owls sounding off. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we were all zoned in, and we were all wanting to hear something while we were talking. And sure enough, we did hear something because our minds, our senses are I don't know. I guess you could say is we've become programmed like that over a period of
Well,
time.
I think at night
So
that sense of hearing and listening at night for us, for me, I mean, I would delve my sense of hearing as a strong suit for me compared to walking visually, looking at forests as I'm walking along, just because I know how easy it is to miss stuff as you're walking along, right?
oh yeah,
But at night, when you hear, like for instance, when you hear a howl at night, it's not just listening to the howl, it's listening for, are there
what?
vowel shifts from A's to O's and O's to A's, which typically canines cannot reproduce, little
Mhm.
things like that. And so to sit there and listen for that stuff, to me almost feels more intriguing, at least to tell if they're there. Are you going to
Mhm.
move the ball listening to something? Are you going to move the ball capturing an audio recording? No. There's no
Right,
scientist that's going to say Bigfoot's real because you captured an audio recording.
right,
But when I'm
exactly.
trying to figure out, is this an area that's active or that they're in? Because of the amount of time that I've spent in the outdoors, I have become really familiar with the sounds that many vertebrate mammals can make and can't make in the areas that I'm in. I feel comfortable listening at night and trying to decipher, is there a plausible, natural, known explanation for what I heard, or is this moving somewhere else? Walking through a forest, dude, just because two trees fell across each other and made an X don't mean nothing. I mean, and I'm not saying that Bigfoot couldn't have put it there, but I'm not going to have any way to tell if they did or not. And, you
Right.
start looking for footprints, you start looking for other signs. I guess that's the only direction you can go with that. But there's just something so intriguing about sitting in the dark and listening to me
Yeah.
that is really something I enjoy. But,
Yeah. It's kind of what's the right word to use? I don't know. It's therapeutic. I don't know. It's like relaxing. It's comforting. At the same time. So I mean, it can be. I know there's been numbers of times like I go out in the woods a lot by myself. And I sit there, relax. Yeah, I might have a fire going, and it's just anybody that loves a camp knows the enjoyment and the peace
yeah.
just being there.
Mhm.
But then when you have people also like me, you, or whoever else that look into Bigfoot and whatnot, well, it's like that. Again, we're just naturally zoned into things, and we pick up on things that. Like, there's been times I've been out there where I've heard things where no one else has because they're just, I don't know, in their own world or something. But I was like, come on, guys, that was pretty obvious. Did you guys hear that? Little thing. I don't know. I mean, I guess, like I said, I guess you got to be wanting to hear it, or I don't know. It's
Yeah, it's just getting tuned into it, I think. It's almost like
yeah,
allowing yourself to get tuned into. Not only do I experience that sitting around a campfire and camping and being in those areas, like enjoying that kind of stuff, but for me, archery hunting is a lot like that. When I'm in a tree stand 16 feet off the ground and nothing else in that area is aware that I'm there, got cover scent on, I've got wearing camouflage, I'll watch a squirrel walk down a tree line through dry leaves and it's so loud. And
yeah.
I'll think, man, I'm really tuned in to what kind of noise a little squirrel can make right now. And then I'll find myself an hour later, I'll look down to my right and 20 yards from my tree, there's a deer stand there and I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, how did that thing walk up on me and not make any noise? I wasn't tuned into it. I
Right.
stopped listening for that right thing for a little while. I was preoccupied by something. It's just being tuned into what you're hearing. And I think that to me, it kind of feels like, and again, I'm not talking about trying to obtain evidence that will prove Bigfoot is real. Audio isn't going to do that. The things you hear won't do that. But when you're trying to identify if a certain area is a quote high value target to look at further, are they in this area? Do they utilize this area? It seems to me that being in the dark and listening feels like more of an even playing field to me. Like it can hear me, but I can hear it too. And
Right.
when you're talking about visually trying to see something that's out there 24 hours a day, every day of its life, dude, you might never see it. I mean, it gets so good. It would have to
Yeah.
get so good at
Oh
the
yeah.
way it moves and the way it hides and the way that it waits for you to look away before it moves. You know, I mean, just that. I would just imagine that it almost doesn't feel like it's an even playing ground. Like it can watch me walk everywhere and I can't tell where it's at, right?
Right.
But when it
Exactly.
comes to audio, it's a little bit more of an even playing ground. If it makes a sound, I'm going to hear it. And if I make a sound, it's going to hear me, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. As far as what you're talking about, the visual thing there, it's one thing I often share and or bring up for illustration on various reasons for various reasons is Bigfoot. They're in the woods. It's their environment. Just like deer, that's their environment. Bear, they're in the woods. It's their environment. So they know that forest better than we do.
Yeah.
And then they know how to blend in. I believe, in my honest opinion, it's a natural thing. And the illustration or the example I like to share often is look at Jane Goodall, or for those who may know, Ian Redmond. These two individuals, they've been in the jungle. They've been in uh, close proximity of observing these mountain gorillas. Like some of them have physical contact with them, but they're also watching them 5, 10 feet in front of them. Even though they're right there, when these primates go in behind their foliage, even though they're still right there, sometimes they become totally invisible,
Yeah.
completely gone. But yet they're right there. And I like to bring that up for people to consider that Bigfoot may be working the same way. He might be right behind that tree or behind that
Absolutely.
foliage, and we don't know
And
he's there.
I think that
So
it's possible that it living every day, every hour of its life in that environment, it's possible that it can get so good at something that we just can't wrap our heads around. I mean, it may seem supernatural. How did it get from A to B without me, but we just don't get it. We aren't capable of getting it. The analogy that I use for that is I spent several years in the Army, and one of the places I was stationed was Fort Benning, Georgia, where the Ranger School is. The first of the 75th and the second of the 75th were stationed there, and that's where the airborne school was. So I ran one of the one of the firing ranges on the Malone complex up off of Harmony Church, which is right next to the base. And we would get the first and 75th, or the first and the second and the 75th Ranger platoons out there on our firing range. And you watch a guy who's been in that squad for maybe a year, and how
mhm.
they move through the woods and how they move around. And then you watch a guy who's been doing it for 14 years.
Right,
And you're talking about two different animals, dude. That guy who has been living and breathing it for over a decade, the way they move through the woods, how elusive they are. And it's like you're just standing with your mouth hanging open. Like, how can he move from there to there that quickly? And I didn't hardly even get to see it, and I didn't hear it. And it's because he gets that good at it, doing it every day for that long. And now you start factoring in, we're talking about a bipedal that lives in the wilderness for decades. it's possible it can get that good at something that we just can't wrap our head around it. Like, it just doesn't make sense to us, right?
Right.
But so I don't know if Patrick was asking this to you or not. I assume he was. Ever go down
Yeah.
to Bath County Lake Muma? I'm from West Virginia, he says.
Yeah, Bath County. Tell you what, I've heard a number of reports out there. I know Lake Muma. I visited there. That's not far from me at all. It's a little west of me. But I've heard some very cool stories. The last one I recall that I can think of off the top of my head, there was actually a fisherman that was fishing out of the river that runs out towards Lake Muma, and he kept hearing things. He kept hearing and experiencing things, and rocks started getting thrown. Then he started smelling something. Then started hearing vocalizations, so screaming, and he actually ended up seeing something eventually. But yeah, he kept going back and forth from one side to the river to the other because the river he was at wasn't too wide and it wasn't that deep. He had waders on, um, but yeah, there's been some sightings and other experiences out there from people. Lake Mumai, the whole area. If no one's ever been out there, it's a very beautiful area. Uh, but yeah, Bath County is a hot spot. That's just west of my research area. Um, yeah, because I even though I don't like to give specific locations of my area, but I will say that's west of my area. So yeah, actually southwest to be exact. It's below my area. So yeah, from where I'm at. But yeah.
Yeah. No, Channel 13 was just in the chat, had mentioned I've got these too that I wear when I'm archery hunting, or a headset that you can turn the volume, you can actually adjust the volume for what you're hearing from distances. And it's so crazy. I mean, you got to get used to wearing them, first of all, because I mean, a bird will land in a
Oh
few
yeah.
trees over from you and start chirping, and it'll sound like it's on your shoulder. But
Yeah.
they're also real nice because if you ever wear them to the range and you're shooting trap or something, it amplifies all the sound around you, but it deadens the percussion sound. So it's actually like wearing noise canceling headphones when it comes to loud booms.
Right.
But yeah, you
Yeah.
can get, these are headsets that, by the way, you can buy for, I think, still under $100. I mean, I think I got mine for like $89 at Cabela's, and they're freaking awesome. I love them.
Now you talking about like the bionic
Yep.
ear hearing thing? Well, I got one. I got a new one. I have my old one. Mine's considered, if you look at them online, the type I have is considered a toy or a bird listening device. But which they're normally 20 to 30, $40. Well, I got a new one. I've been looking into wanting to get a new one, and the one I have was like almost $60. And this one here, um, it comes with an SD card that you can put into it, and like all the other ones, they have like a short maybe 10-second record playback thing. But this one here, you have the capability of uploading audio, and you can record between 4 to 6 hours of audio, which is awesome. Um, Now you can use any type of headset into this device.
Yeah.
But it's considered the bionic ear. There's there's other companies that make them, and they may call it something different. But
There's
the
a
one I
couple
have,
companies that make them, I think, now.
yeah. But I played around with mine here and there. For what little I have played around with mine, I'm actually impressed with it. I'm very impressed for being only a $50-$60 device. It works great. It really does.
There's something initially that's apprehensive about putting a headset on to hear better. Right? I mean, one of the reasons I got it was my son's shooting trap leagues, and I would like to be standing up on the range at the trap range and be able to give him advice and talk to him, and you can hear crystal clear. I'd turn it way down to like less than 1 for it to be like normal audio volume. And when I'm 10 feet away from him, I could say, you need to exhale half that breath before you pull the trigger or whatever. but yet as people were shooting shotguns all around me on different lanes, I never heard that. You'd hear it, but it'd muffle it. So
Right.
I really enjoyed the fact that you could have normal conversations with it, but still protect your ears from those loud sounds. But when I started archery hunting and wearing them and turning them up to like 7 or 8, and you realize that I'm sitting in a tree stand, I can hear a cat meow at a barn that's like 300 yards behind me. It's like, what?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I've had fun with mine. I mean, like I said, I don't have a lot of devices, but for what I do have, I need to start using them a little bit more. I mean, yeah, I got a thermal flare, the TK Scout. If you're on a budget and want a fairly decent thermal flare, I would go with the TK Scout. Yeah, I mean, it's compared to what the other thermal flares go for. This is only about a $500 device, but it records video and pictures. It takes pictures. I have a real good iGen 2020 night vision device. I haven't used that enough, and yeah, I got a few other basic things, um, but yeah, I just need to practice using them more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're fun to use.
To have nice equipment, but you need to understand the parameters and not only what it's capable of, but what it's not capable of.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah, I will tell you from my experiences using a TK Scout flare. You don't want to use it for long periods of time when you're out in the woods because you take your eye away from it after viewing through it. Yeah, you're going to be blind. It messes with your vision. It blurs your eyeball until it comes into focus again. But yeah, you only want to use it for short segments at a time. I learned that on my own, and I'll tell you, a friend of mine who's going to be one of my speakers here in June next month, Rick Rellis. He's a BFRO researcher. When last year when we were in North Carolina, when he gave his presentation down there at the North Carolina Bigfoot Festival, he actually ended up bringing that up, and I was like, "Oh, so I'm not the only one." So I was glad to hear because he was saying the same thing. You don't want to use them for long periods of time because again, they will mess with your vision. So
I have a pair of the Flare C5s that are about the size of a smartphone, really. But
okay.
I like what they're capable. They're like 700 a piece right now. They aren't like $3-4 grand, but they're not. They don't give them away.
Right.
But I love mounting them on two side holders on ram mounts on my kayak, one aiming left and one aiming right, a little bit, maybe facing 45 degrees forward. Because if I'm kayaking at nighttime or in the dark or early morning before sunup, up and down a river, I can just hit record on them and go, and it's recording both banks of the river through the brush, all that, as I'm going up. I'm not trying to hold it and move around and see if anything's there. I'm really more curious at the end of the trip to go back and watch it and see was there something that I caught on it, because I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just not being the guy who's moving around with it like, hey, hold still, let me take your picture kind of mentality.
Right.
But I have gone back and watched those, when I've done that, and been kind of surprised at some of the stuff I have captured on the sides of a river. One time I filmed a lynx on the side of the river. I filmed several bobcats, and the lynx that I filmed on the side of the river, it was up on Clearwater River up in northern Minnesota. I actually filmed it the first time following me. I mean, it would be in front of me and I'd keep going. And as it disappeared, as if I had passed it, it like another probably a couple hundred yards up the river, it'd be coming on screen in front of me again. It's like it just kept looping around, it was curious. It just was watching me paddle by,
Right.
And after that, then I started I knew there was a lynx in the area because prior to that, the week before that, I was paddling up that river at about 5:45 in the morning when it was still dark, and a lynx, and I didn't even know there was a lynx in this area. I mean, it's not unheard of, but it's not super common in northern Minnesota. That these lynx would be there.
Oh
But
yeah.
the sound that a lynx will make when it's screaming and it's dark is one of the most haunting sounds. And I've heard all the different ranges of sounds a bobcat can make, mountain lions make. A lynx, for being not as big as a mountain lion, but for being a 40-pound, 45-pound creature, it sounds like it's about 1,000 pounds when it with the guttural drive out of that type of a moaning scream that it makes. I've never
Yeah.
heard anything like that as haunting as that in my life. It is absolutely horrible.
Now, lynx, as far as I know, I don't believe, or I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know or think they're in Virginia. Now, bobcat, on the other hand, yes, I've seen
Yeah.
bobcat. I've captured them a few times on my cameras, and I've heard them at night. If you're not familiar with that sound or not expecting it, I mean, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, at nighttime, especially being like real close to your camp, and they're seeing you, but you're not seeing them. But they'll,
I
oh
think
my goodness,
bobcats are pretty much all over. I actually believe that mountain lions are in most all of the states. A lot of DNR don't want to admit that or talk about numbers because like I mentioned this morning on this morning show, I think it drives down tourism. People overreact to it, so they don't go on record and say, we believe there might be some mountain lion in this. You won't hear people say that with state
exactly.
agencies. But
Yeah,
I do
I
believe
agree.
that lynx are probably in northern Michigan, across northern Minnesota, maybe the northern regions of North Dakota. It's not as forested there, but especially in northern Montana and Wyoming and northern Idaho. But I don't think they get much further south than that typically, just because they just don't acclimate to long durational hot weather, and
Ah,
they're
yeah,
kind of built for the cold, so to speak. And I think they're comfortable when it's 60, 70, 80 degrees. I don't think they're comfortable when it's humid and 120 degrees. I mean, I just don't think they'd be south of the Mason-Dixon line. I don't even know if they'd be south of the Great Lakes, so to speak.
right. Okay, yeah, because I'm originally from Massachusetts, but I grew up here in Virginia, so I was never really paid much attention to that kind of thing. So
Yeah, the
yeah,
mountain lions, they're talking about that in chat. I mean, that's on record that, the state of New Hampshire especially is a good I had long conversation with Alex Petikoff about this, that the DNR denied that there were mountain lions in New Hampshire for almost 2 decades.
well, that's a big thing
And
down
then about
here.
10 or 12 years ago, hikers had put cameras out all over because they felt that they were, and they caught video of a full-grown male mountain lion standing right in front of the camera. And at that point, the New Hampshire DNR came out and admitted, well, they're not only here, but we've kind of known about them for a while, but they just didn't want people to overreact to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's unfortunately, that's what people will do. And if you say, hey, look, there was a mountain lion on this golf course in the Black Hills of South Dakota, people are kind of used to that in the Black Hills, right? I mean, they had a news story here about 2 months ago of a mountain lion that walked across a playground that kids were out on recess an hour before it walked across it. And but yet people didn't overreact. It's like there's hundreds of mountain lions in that area, and then, it's to be expected now and then. Yet if
Right.
you start going to the other side of the state where mountain lions show up now and then but aren't very common, and you said there's a mountain lion that we saw on the golf course here, every home around that area will not let their dog out at 2 a.m. to go pee anymore. They're afraid to let their kids go ride their bikes because that's just how humans would react to that in an area where they're not used to them being.
Right.
And so that's what makes game fishing parks and DNR agencies and stuff reluctant to publicly say, oh, we think there's this many mountain lions here. I get why they don't. It drives down tourism. It's going to cost
Exactly.
millions of dollars over the course of a tourist season.
And that's what I've been telling people. It's a big part of it's the economy, and then like you said, it's a fear factor. They don't want to put the fear in the public. Yeah, because I've been in a lot of discussions with that. I mean, here on the East Coast, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, just us few states, and I know there's other states along the East Coast where they're being denied that they exist there, but they're being cited there. But here in Virginia, I mean, I know there was already another public blog that was out there with a listing of sightings in the county I live in the county that I work out of. But when I put a blog up on my blog site and I shared it around, I was blown away by the response. I mean, just over on the other side of the mountain. I mean, all within roughly a 30-mile range, give or take.
Yeah.
There was a lot of sightings and reports, but people say when they call report these things, the authorities are denying them and saying that you saw. I mean, I saw one back in 2015 in my research area in the National Forest. I wasn't alone. I had a witness with me too, a buddy of mine at the time. When I first noticed it, I didn't know what I was looking at because I was like, what the heck is that? It was something black sitting on the side of the forest road. I was like, what the heck? So there was something there. I couldn't make out what it was till it got up on all fours and started walking across the road. And yeah, you could clearly see the whole thing. It was completely black and it had a long tail dragging behind it and just went into the woods on the other side. It was like around 7 o'clock in the evening. There was still a little bit of daylight, but you could see it clear as day.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, I've been getting reports left and right, on that stuff, so they are here in Virginia, even though, and then you have the general public. Some of them believe, some of them don't, because if your authorities say that they don't exist here, then you're part of the general public are going to believe what the authorities tell you, So
Texas Jack verifies what we were saying about lynx. He says, I'm big and hairy, and I can confirm the heat and humidity sucks.
All right.
I'll tell you what, when I grew up north here, when I first went into the military, I went through basic training in Kentucky, but my first duty station was Fort Benning, Georgia. And it was so drastically different than the climate here. I mean, even on the nice days, it could be 60 degrees out, but it'd still be 100% humidity, and you're sweating your ass off.
Oh, yeah.
You just couldn't get away from the humidity. It was really different than what I was used to.
Yeah, I have a buddy of mine that I graduated with. Now, here's a kid that never went outside. He hardly ever spent time in the outdoors or just playing outside. He was always on video games or on his computer. Now, he went into the Air Force, and he did a career out of it. He got his schooling and his education for his career that he does now. But his boot camp was down in Texas in the middle of the desert. Now, I know they don't have humidity. They have a different kind of heat level than we do, but they have more of a dry heat, I guess. But just hearing and thinking about that, I said, man, he survived that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess if there was humidity involved, maybe that would have been a lot rougher, I guess. But I've never been in a dry heat like what parts of Texas has. But but he made it, and he's making good money right now.
I just enjoy living somewhere where you truly get all four seasons, and the winters are a little more wintry than I care for them to be sometimes. But I remember the first winter that I was stationed down south. I actually, for a little bit there, I was stationed in Huntsville, Alabama, at the Redstone Arsenal there. Very interesting place. But I was dating a girl, and we were at her place for Christmas, and her family was there, and they had a pool in the backyard. And on Christmas Day, I'm sitting in a Adirondack chair next to a pool, and it's like 80 degrees, and I'm just like this isn't Christmas, man. This is
Wow.
not Christmas. It was hard for me to get used to that, but
That's kind of how I felt this with our winter that we had here in Virginia this year. I mean, we've had some good snows in the past. Don't get me wrong, but here I am. I'm waiting for winter to start. I was like, next you know, we're already getting springtime. I was like, what happened to winter? You know, because I mean, the most I seen maybe was a light little dusting here and there. I mean, when I had my trail cameras out in the woods a few months back, when I was going through all the video clips of them, I was like, oh, look at that. They got snow out there because it's higher elevation. You're out there more in the mountains, you know. But
yeah.
But
it's
yeah,
all
we
about
didn't
what
get
you're
none.
used to, you know, what you get acclimated to. I remember when I was in Fort Benning, it was in 1988. They got half an inch of snow overnight one night, and I was driving a Pontiac Fiero mid-engine rear-wheel drive, pretty much the worst car ever built to drive anywhere on snow. But I drove that to work, and nobody was at work. And I called my captain. I said, "Where is everybody?" He says, "Oh, nobody's going to work today because of the snow." I said, "It's a half an inch of snow, dude." I said, "We get like 2 feet of snow, and we still go to work back where I."
Right. Oh yeah.
But, I mean,
Absolutely.
everybody was in the ditch along the interstate, and that half an inch of snow really screwed up a lot of people's world down there.
Yeah. Well, I can recall it's been some years, but back when I had my little Hyundai Accent, little 5-speed manual transmission, front wheel drive. I mean, we had a good snow where snow was still heavily packed on the main roads, and I was in town, and here's this Jeep Cherokee. I guess they have 4-wheel drive. They think they're, and that's the thing. Some of these 4-wheel drives in the snow think they're invincible. This guy takes off, and next thing you know, he's doing 360s and goes into the ditch. And I'm just like going right by him. I said, dude, you got to take, front wheel drives. I learned that if you don't gun them, I mean, they do real good in the snow. Although, yeah, 4-wheel drives are good too if you know how to use them,
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
I noticed Matt Larson from Central Florida Bigfoot is in the chat. Wanted to let you know, Matt, today on Facebook, he's been doing a lot of work in an area he calls the corridor near the Green Swamp in Florida. And Matt, for those that don't know, is a great, great photographer. But he has some really nice trail cams set up down there. And he posted on Facebook this morning a picture of a bobcat that he had captured on a photo that was walking across a log that was right in front of the camera. And the backdrop and the way, the post editing that he does to the pictures to really make them, the contrast and all that. I tell you what, that was an amazing picture, Matt. I loved that picture you shared. It was pretty cool.
Very cool.
But those who want to check it out can find him. He's Central Florida Bigfoot on YouTube, but also you can find him on Facebook with Matt Larson.
Yeah, I just interviewed a Florida skunk ape researcher. For those who know Marie Dumont, I had her on just a couple weeks ago. No, yeah, she is part of. I forget. She goes by the. I can't remember what name she goes under, but it's something to do with the Florida skunk ape. But yeah, Marie Dumont. Yeah, she's a real nice lady, and she does a lot of research. She's actually worked a lot with David Shealy down there, who has a shop and a museum down in the Everglades. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you got coming up here on the radar. Are you, with spring and summer arriving? Are you going to any of these conferences? Doing any appearances? Anything going on?
Yeah, I got a few speaking engagements coming up. A couple small ones and a couple big ones. See, we're in May. I actually got, JMU, James Madison University. They have a employee appreciation day where it's a festival they do where they have a bunch of workshops and different seminars. I was actually contacted by them to come up there and do a presentation. So I'll be doing that later this month, which should be interesting. Talking with the students and the staff there about Bigfoot. So
Cool.
it'll also give me the opportunity to promote what's coming up in June. I got a few things coming up in June. The first week of June 9th, 10th, and 11th, I will be speaking as a keynote speaker at the Marionville, Pennsylvania event in Forest County. Well, it's known as the Forest County Bigfoot Festival in Marionville, Pennsylvania, which I'm looking forward to that. Then the week after that, right here in Virginia, June 17th, is the ECBRO Virginia Bigfoot Conference that I've been hosting every year for the last 5+ years. We have a good group of speakers. We're anticipating a very nice turnout on attendance this year. For those you know from Animal Planet, Call of the Wild Man, also known as Turtle Man. Turtle Man will be making an appearance with us this year. He's a lot of fun. I've got to meet him a couple times down in Tennessee. He is a very outgoing, very fun, energetic guy. So we got a lot of people looking forward to meeting him. A lot of the locals that are coming out of the woodwork that's learning about our event are excited because they look forward to meeting him. So
I think that's a great way to kind of, cross promote and get people aware of this. Is everybody says, well, some of these conferences are a little bit diluted, especially the ones that kind of intermix with some of the paranormal and stuff. But I've seen that happen with different TV personalities where Josh Gates or somebody will be speaking about his TV shows and the locations they shot at, and there's a whole Bigfoot community that is exposed to him that really maybe he was never on the radar before. But there's a lot of people there to see him that never thought about stepping inside of the Bigfoot community before either. And it's opening up their eyes to it. So
exactly.
I think that's a great thing that, having Turtle Man there. And he's the people that I've talked to that I've met him say the exact same thing. Huge outgoing personality. It don't matter who it is. If they say, "Can I take my picture with you?" He's standing there smiling. I mean, that guy.
Oh yeah, he's. I'm going to tell you, young or old. I mean, he will. I mean, he becomes friends with everybody he meets. I mean, that's from my observation with him and the way he is with the young people. And it doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, yeah, he will put on a show for you right there in person. I mean, you'll hear him yee, and all day long. And so it's going to be great having him. Like I said, he's going to be a lot of fun just being there. We have roughly over 45 vendors. That's including food trucks and whatnot. For those, we got Ed Brown. For those who might know Ed Brown, also known as Big Truth. Rick Rellis, a BFRO researcher. We have him. Zach Bales. Zach Bales is from Kentucky. He's actually a teacher, a high school teacher, I believe. And I could be wrong on that. I know he's a teacher. So, him and his wife are coming up. And then who else we got there? For those who know B Mills, from I believe she's from out of Ohio. B Mills is coming down to speak. So and then we got, like I said, these are great people. These are people that boots on the ground. They they're not big celebrity people like appears at all these other events, but I like to bring the boots on the ground researchers. Because as far as Turtle Man is going to be the first of any kind of celebrity that we've ever had at our event. So, because I know a lot of these newer events that's been established for the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years. I mean, they've been having big names from the get-go. I mean, I'm working my way up, but I don't want people to lose focus on what these events are really, what they should be about. Because I want to bring the research. I want to bring the awareness. We have entertainment too. I mean, we're going to have live music there. We got a local folk band that's going to be playing country music from 12 to 3. So, all this is taking place June 17th right here in Wares Cave, Virginia. Anybody that wants more information about that could go to the website at www.vabigfootcon.com or visit our Facebook event page, ECBRO Annual Virginia Bigfoot Con. So,
Okay.
so yeah, and then I'll be in West Virginia the week after, speaking there in Sutton, West Virginia at the Bigfoot festival. And then July, I'll be back in Pennsylvania again. August, I'll be back in Pennsylvania. So, and then October, I'm supposed to be going down to South Carolina. They have the Westminster Bigfoot Festival there. So that's always been a huge
I love
event.
South Carolina, and October is an awesome time to be there, man. That
Be-
sounds
you be-
fun.
Yeah, you best believe it. The fun thing about doing it, I mean, it was a group of people I end up hanging out with down there. We all end up getting together. Like last year, we all stayed in a really nice large cabin they put us up in. And the fun thing about that was not just the cabin and the fellowship of the people. And then we got to do a little Bigfooting down there. So that's the plan to do it again this year, but spend a couple extra days down there because every time I'm down there, and it's not just South Carolina, every event I go to, I got people sharing stories with me, and wanting to share their sightings or something they experienced. So, I mean, these events are very rewarding because that's why a lot of people go there. They're going to these events to be with other like-minded people.
I think
Experience.
the fellowship is really, I mean, that should be the reason why people go to a conference with a lot of people. Is the opportunity to fellowship with people who have had experiences or think the same way that you do. Whether or not or you learn something or the photo ops with those who are there speaking, things like that, that's just the icing on the cake. But the cake itself is the fellowship of being around people.
Absolutely.
And hearing their experiences.
And I will tell you, some of these conventions, like the ones I go to up in Pennsylvania, a couple of these are small conventions, but you'll be surprised. I enjoy myself at these small conventions versus these bigger crowded conventions.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you might see more things on display at these bigger conventions. They have more money involved in their events, and which they make things appealing for the people. But the vendors are another thing. The vendors are what make a big part of these events. Because some of these vendors, like the vendors I got coming to my event, these are unique vendors that you will not find at your typical flea market. A lot of these are individually owned business. Like, for example, I got a buddy of mine and lives down in Roanoke, Virginia. He makes handcrafted stuff. Like, for example, right here, this plaque on the wall, if I could get it off. This is just an example. It's wooden, but it's
that's cool.
Yeah, this is just one of them. Right here, I love this thing right here.
So
and then, of course,
he probably laser engraves that, but then goes back and hand paints it. So it's
that's that big bear paw. He does that. He does a lot of the stuff he does is Bigfoot or cryptid themed. He does he does Mothman. You name it, he does it. So, but yeah, he's one of my vendors. Cryptid HQ. He's got a Facebook page and there's a website, of course. So, but yeah, I got some, like I said, a lot of unique Bigfoot and cryptid themed vendors. I even have a couple of paranormal teams that'll be a part of the event, on display selling their stuff. So. But yeah, there's that much going on. Oh, then September 9th and 10th, I will be in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, at the Smoky Mountain Terror event. It's they have a lot of TV personalities, celebrities that were playing Jason or somebody in some movie, and
sure.
They got Eddie Munster that's going to be there. So. Yeah, they got a good variety of people that are going to be there as celebrities. I'm one of the speakers for that event. I'm not sure. I'm not sure who else is speaking there. I know I'm one of them. And then there's there is a buddy of mine from Tennessee. He runs his own paranormal group. He's going to be there as a speaker. So yeah, got all these events going on there. I'm excited about a lot of them. So, but yeah, don't get me wrong.
It's
Some of
crazy
these,
how many events are out there now. But I kind of lean the way you do. I like these smaller events. They're, first of all, I've been saying this for a while that, there are no universities that are giving out master's degrees in Bigfootology. Okay.
Right, right,
We're all the professors and we're all the students, and we learn from each other and we teach each other. And you might find yourself at one of those smaller conventions learning more from somebody you just met having a discussion with out in an area than you would from listening to a speaker. You
right.
just don't know who you're going to run into and the fellowship that occurs. I love that about conferences, is that
Yeah, I mean, like last year, for example, up in Pennsylvania at a small convention, it was actually at the last minute when the event was ending and everybody was packing up and leaving. Um, Me and my girlfriend at the time, we still had the whole booth and everything set up. And we had this couple come in, and they wanted to buy stuff up left and right. They were buying everything, because they didn't want to miss out. Then while they're doing this, they start telling us about what's been going on their property. And then we're getting intrigued because when we hear stuff, if we're up there, we want to investigate. So we
yeah.
set it up where we got to meet up with them, and they I think that it was the next day we planned on meeting up with them, and we end up going together, meeting up with them. We end up having lunch, and then they took us to the property. So yeah, we got to investigate the property and everything else, and this is in an area, for those who are familiar with this, Chestnut Ridge. The Chestnut Ridge area in Pennsylvania has been known to be a very big hotspot for Bigfoot and cryptid sightings.
Mhm.
And for those who know, Small Town Monsters have done some of their filming there. So,
Yep.
I've been invited to come back up there to do more investigating, and hopefully next time I go up there, I'll actually spend a night or two up there. Because of course, all the exciting stuff usually ends up happening at nighttime. So, but yeah. I mean, I've done some research and investigating in Pennsylvania some years ago. I dedicated like 2 whole months up there doing some research. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do it that long anytime soon. But again,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so
Yeah, if only
I mean,
there was, a couple more months in a year, right? Then you
I
could
know.
squeeze
Yeah.
simplicity.
I mean, because like many other people, a lot of people think that hey, us Bigfoot researchers and whatnot, they think this is what we do for a living. No, I got to go to work every day. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, I wish I had the time to, I mean, most of us are considered weekend warriors. That's if we could afford to go out there to ride. Because where my research area is, it's about an hour away. I have to look at my resources. Like, do I have the means to drive out there? I mean, I have to. I don't get to go out there every weekend, even though most of my weekends are usually free right now. But
yeah.
so,
It's all
but
time management, man.
I mean, it's like right now turkey season's in. I have not been able to get out there to go turkey hunting, and
Yeah,
that's either
I
because
usually archery hunt turkey every spring, but I skipped it this year just because I just don't. This is the first year in a long time I haven't done it. And quite
yeah.
honestly, I've been having turkeys walk through my backyard, I think trying to send me the message. We know you didn't get a tag this year, so we're going to start
Yeah.
across the backyard real quick.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, like I said, it's either been because I couldn't afford to go out there, or there's been a lot of storms and rain out that way, and so I don't know. I have to play things by ear, week by week, see how things work out and pan out for me. But who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe this weekend might be different because right now, since it's been in season for the spring, I mean, we could only hunt up till noontime anyway. But now that May's here, I think it turned into a full day hunt. So yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, I
Yeah, I
appreciate
got.
you taking the time to join us and coming on the show tonight. It was awesome having you. I'd like to have you back at some point too. I'm
Oh
going to
yeah,
start doing a show now and then where we put together different panels and talk in detail about some different things that surface in research. I'd like to have you back maybe for one of those panels. That'd be fun.
absolutely. Yeah, and for those who are listening, I do organize and host group campouts too. I got one coming up this month as well, and then then one later on in September. So those are things to look forward to.
Where's the
These
best
group
place to get information on those?
Well, for those who may not know me on Facebook, you could send me a email at ecbro98@gmail.com. You could contact me through my websites. I have the event website, vabigfootcon.com, or my personal website is ecbrofounder.com. But yeah, like I said, I'm all over Facebook. You could contact me if you watch one of my Friday night podcasts on Bigfoot Zone ECBRO. I'm live every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So
Okay.
yeah,
And Daniel, just for those that are listening on podcast too, once we're done with the show and it's comment sections are opened up here on YouTube, feel free to go into the comment section and put your contact info in there so that anybody who's listening on podcast, if you want to get a hold of Daniel, you can go to the comments here and you'll probably see it as one of the first ones, if not the first one. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put that in there for you. So
all right. Well, you have a good rest of your Monday night, and I will stay in touch with you, buddy. Appreciate
sounds
you coming
good.
on.
Thank you for everything, Jeff. I really enjoyed being on here with you.
I enjoyed having you. I think it was an interesting discussion. I think everybody enjoyed it, and we will do it again.
Excellent. You guys have
All
a
right.
good night.
You too, buddy.
Thank you.
So yeah, that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of the 35th episode of Pine Island Research since we've moved to the Untold Radio Network. I should probably count up my shows. You know, people always say, have you done 100 shows or whatever? I may be there. I don't know. I had on the Pine Island Research channel on YouTube, I do a lot of chill streams during the week where we just kind of have laid back conversations. People are welcome to pop on. We usually do that on Tuesday or Friday afternoons, middays sometimes. But, before I came to Untold with our Monday night show, I was doing it on my old channel. I'm not sure how many episodes I did. I'll have to count all those up. I know I had to take a couple of them down because YouTube didn't like some of the things that were happened, which that's fine. But I'll have to see. Maybe I'm only at about 75 or 80, but it could be close to 100. But either way, I'll tell you what, I am so blessed to look at the names that are in chat, and so many of you I have seen hanging around, being a part of the show, being a part of the chat since the first one I did. And I appreciate that. I appreciate your guys' support. If you're not a subscriber to Untold Radio Network yet, feel free to hit the subscribe button and pound that thumbs up on your way out. I would appreciate that too. But I hope everybody has a great week this week. And we will see you next week on Coffee Time Monday morning. That is at 11:30 Eastern Time, a.m. And next Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern here on Untold Radio. So we will see you guys later, and thank you so much for being with us tonight.